And may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Committee Member Gutierrez is not present. We'll start with Committee Member Harmon.
Here.
And then Committee Chair Friedman.
Here. We do have a quorum, so we will go on to general public comment. This is for items that are not on the agenda but under the purview of the Finance Committee. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak? I don't see any in the room. And are there any online?
Chair Friedman, there are no hands raised online.
Okay, I'll close public comment, and I will put it over to the item for today, which is the Finance Committee review of the fiscal year 23 recommended budget. And turn over to Mr. DiMartini.
Thank you very much, Chair Friedman. Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Keith DiMartini. I'm the city's finance director, and I'll kick off this presentation this afternoon where we will focus on fee changes in the city administrator's recommended budget for fiscal year 2023. And today we will be focusing on fee changes related to enterprise departments. So the agenda for today's presentation is for each department representative to come up and describe their proposed fee changes. I'll first provide a summary so that you have sort of the lay of the land for today. And then I thought I'd wrap up today with just a quick check-in on the overall city budget calendar so that you can see where we are on the status of all of the budget-related items before both the Finance Committee and the full City Council, and then take any questions, public comment, and discussion that you might have. So first, just this slide summarizes all of the proposed fee changes for the enterprise fund departments that are before you this afternoon. We'll start with downtown parking, where they're proposing changes for their hourly parking rates, use service charges, and late fees. We'll then go to the airport, where they have a parking rate change as well as commercial ground transportation. Then we'll turn it over to solid waste. They have some fees related to trash enclosures, shopping carts, and other special services. And then we'll turn it over to water and wastewater, where they have some changes related to installation and permit fees, as well as capacity charges. It's important to note that for solid waste, water, and wastewater, we will not be reviewing any of their rate changes for utility rates. This is solely focused on fee changes. We'll then go to golf, where they have changes to their green and cart fees and driving range fees. And then we'll wrap up with the waterfront that has some changes regarding their slip permits, cruise ships, and parking rates. So now I'll turn it over to the departments now, starting with downtown parking.
Sorry, thank you. I'll start with the second one because it's the simplest. We are proposing to add a late fee to monthly and commuter parking permit invoices that go more than 60 days past due. This fee would equal 1.5% of the total balance due, and this would help cover the cost of the staff time that's needed to sort of chase down those payments and keep those accounts current, and hopefully encourage our customers to be more regular with their bill payments. Next, we'll talk about the big one. So for the first time in 16 years, downtown parking is proposing to raise hourly parking rates in our lots from $1.50 for an hour, a portion thereof, up to $2.50 an hour. We're still going to be keeping the 75-minute complimentary parking period at the beginning. As I'm sure you're aware, the Downtown Parking Fund was hit harder than any other city fund by the impacts of the COVID pandemic. When the virus hit, we had to shut down completely. We had to lay off our hourly staff, and our revenue basically went to zero for 3 months. Then when things started to reopen, we had and continue to have a lot of challenges with staffing our parking lots. Parking demand in general took a big dive, particularly the commuter parking permits because people were working from home. And then, of course, we went through subsequent virus waves, additional closures, things continued to fluctuate. And so overall, we'd estimate that at this point, we've lost around $6.8 million in revenue over the past few years. So as a result of this, we've had to use a large portion of our reserves to float our operations. Those reserves have been designated for a variety of critical capital projects, all of which have had to be put on hold. And looking ahead into fiscal year 23, absent any substantial new revenue, we'd be looking at going below policy reserves and even possibly emptying our reserves entirely. And so if we go to the next slide, please. Even before the pandemic, this day was coming. Our revenues had been stagnant for several years while our costs had continued to increase, despite our best efforts to keep those down. The last time we raised the hourly parking rate was in January of 2006. At that point, if you look at inflation, that's equivalent to $2.13 an hour today, so we have not kept pace with inflation. Also, back at that time, minimum wage was $7.25 an hour. Now it's $15 an hour, and we have to start our lot operators at $16 an hour in order to be competitive in the tight labor market that we have right now. And if we go to the next slide. And this change keeps us in line with comparable coastal cities in California. So we did a survey, we researched 50 other cities that were similar to Santa Barbara in certain ways. And while they don't all have parking systems that are exactly analogous to ours, we found that cities with paid off-street parking, prices ranged anywhere from 50 cents an hour all the way up to $6 an hour. Most cities don't have a unified rate the way that we do. They have a series of different rates or different rates for different lots. So on the low end of that range, the median was about $1.50. On the high end, it was $3. So this change of $2.50 an hour keeps us right in that range with other cities. So with all that said, we are requesting a rate increase to $2.50 an hour for FY23.
A question?
Sure.
Councilmember Harmon?
Thank you, Chair Friedman. Thank you so much. I appreciate this, and thank you for doing this survey. Actually, that was my number one question, what other cities do, so thank you very much. My only question really, and I agree with you, this has been a long time coming. Can you tell me a little bit about the outreach to local businesses and the conversations you've had with them about this change and just their level of preparation and all that for this? Thanks.
Sure, Chair Friedman, Committee Member Harmon. We have done fairly extensive outreach at this point to the local businesses. We've met repeatedly with the downtown organization, with many of their subcommittees, and talked with the members. We've been attending the food and beverage subcommittee meeting. We've met with the property owners committee to get their feedback on this. We've brought this to our downtown parking committee twice now. So we did the first one back in February, then we went back out to the community and got even more input. Based on that, we analyzed a whole other range of options for fees and how we could, possibly make up this gap. Then we went back in March and had another lengthy discussion with the downtown parking committee before finalizing that recommendation.
Thank you. I just have a follow-up, and great. I really appreciate the slide that had the $1.50 in 2006 because I was going to ask that question. I flipped the page and don't have to ask it now, so you were prepared. To follow up on the flip side of the same coin on outreach, what is the outreach been to the general public about this, and then also in particular Spanish-speaking community? What types of outreach are we doing that? Because we know the public is the one who's ultimately going to be paying for it. So what are the efforts that we're doing to make this known?
Chair Freeman, we have put notices, obviously, for our downtown parking committee and when those discussions were happening into various publications. I can't speak specifically to Spanish speaking. We haven't made any specific outreach efforts there.
All right, I just think since this is a change, and I know going forward there's going to be additional changes, I think it's important for the public the general public to understand throughout the city. So any efforts that we could do to enhance that and be able to tell this story. In addition, I remember from a few months back when we were had discussions of it, you mentioned the reserves and how we were losing, if I recall, it was like $50,000 a month or something like that, or a week. I can't remember what it was that at the heart of COVID. So to be able to tell that story and the public to understand that we need it to be solvent, and this is why we're doing it, and then to have that we're kind of similar in line where we're going with other communities be great. So just whatever we could do to let the public know ahead of time.
I'm not certain. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Clark.
Thank you.
Now we're on to airport.
Good afternoon, committee members. Jonathan Abad, Airport's Business Manager. And next slide, please. All right. Included in our fiscal 23 budget are proposed fee increases for the airport parking and ground transportation rates. And for the parking, we're proposing increase of hourly rates beyond the first hour and daily rates for all three lots. And for the ground transportation rates, we're proposing to update both the permitting fees and the pickup and drop-off fees for the first time since the council approved the ground transportation rate structure back in 2018. Next, please. For proposed parking rate increases includes 25-cent increase for the additional hourly after the first hour for all 3 lots, and $2 per day increases for each of the 3 lots. And this increase is forecast to bring about 15% more in revenue for the parking at about $715,000 more annually. This will help support increased costs of parking operations, such as the increase in minimum wage over the past 5 years. And our shuttle van rentals literally doubled in cost over the past year. And we're also currently working on improving our parking equipment to accommodate reservations and more convenient payment methods and such. And we are planning to continue the free shuttle service from the economy lot to the terminal. And in the future, we're looking into maybe getting a bigger shuttle van to make it more convenient, maybe electric. And, you know, the proposed fee increases in parking will help pay for all these upgrades. Thanks. And upon review of the ground transportation program, we're proposing to increase permit and the the permit fees since it was introduced with an additional per additional vehicle fee, a new permit replacement fee, and this is all to reflect the true cost of administering the program. Next slide, please. And for the pickup and drop-off portion, we're proposing to increase 25 cents to the vehicles under 10 passengers, a 50-cent increase to 10 to 24 passengers, and a 75-cent increase to vehicles over 24 passengers. And this proposed increase forecast to bring another 10% in revenue, about $31,000 annually. And the discounted, Southwest airline flights, such as the 3 going to Vegas, it attracted a lot of people flying out of the Santa Barbara from surrounding communities, and we've seen our short and long-term parking lot fill up more, quickly in the weekends and holidays, and this should actually, bring in more demand for the ground transportation program. And next slide, please. I guess that's it. The Airport Commission recommended approval of our fee schedule on April 20th, and we're seeking for you to do the same.
Thank you, Mr. Ibad.
Thank
Any
you.
questions? None from me as well. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you so much.
And next, we are going to solid waste.
Good afternoon, Chair Friedman, Committee Member Harmon. My name is Diego Martin, the analyst in the Environmental Services Division. I'm here today to present changes to our fees next year. As you know, a majority of our revenue comes from our rate revenue, which we presented to this committee on March 29th, and we'll again present those rate changes in more detail to the full council on June 14th. But today I'm here to talk to a little bit more about the other fees that we charge, and specifically some new fees that we're proposing for this next year. Slide, please. We're proposing 4 specific fees for next year. First is the city rents space in some city-owned trash enclosures. We began to offer this service with some specific businesses by agreement. I think it probably makes more sense to include this in our fee schedule for next year. The second 2 fees are related to shopping cart impoundment and returning those shopping carts to those owners throughout the city. I think this was part of the recently adopted code update where we updated some solid waste management regulations. And so this is part of implementing those code updates. And this fourth and last fee is recycling and composting bins. Because we can buy in bulk, we often have a advantage in terms of pricing, and we like to be able to pass some of these savings along to our customers by selling at cost. In addition to that, all of our other kind of special service fees will be increasing by 3%, which is consistent with our rate increase for next year. And that concludes my short presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. These questions may actually be for Ms. Connect. Sorry. About the impoundment fees. So first, Mr. Martin, the second line, the $90, is that for the second time that
Yes,
we impound
my
a-
understanding is that depending on the type of situation, it might either be a 1 or a 2 visit
Oh, okay.
by staff. And these were kind of modeled to recover staff time,
Okay.
the cost of staff time.
Thank you. And then, Ms. Connect, and I'm sorry, I should have prepped this question with you, so if we want to talk about it later, that's totally fine. If I remember that ordinance correctly, we also required that the shopping carts be alarmed or have some type of fencing system. Is that correct? And if so, is there, do we do any credits for the cost of impounding if the retailer has complied in all ways with our ordinance in terms of labeling, geo-fencing, alarming? Is there, I'm just
Ms.
trying to remember.
Connect, before you answer that, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, please.
Because today's agenda is that we're not taking any action, we're just receiving a report, I actually have to recuse myself from these items. But because we don't have a quorum, if I'm out, and because, am I able to continue to sit here since we're not taking any action on
So
this?
glad I've started us on this rabbit hole. I really apologize.
Chair Freeman and Chair Freeman and Commission Member Harmon, I'm going to also, because we don't have a quorum for this, let's maybe defer the discussion. And also, I don't specifically know the ordinance, so I'm going to need to look it up and get back to you on that anyway.
So convenient.
Okay,
So
thank
how's
you.
that for an
Thank you
answer?
for that.
Thank you.
Non-answer.
Thank
And so
you. I'll follow up with an email. Thank you. Ms.
And I
Connect.
just want to, thank you, and I just want to note that when this comes back to the full council, I will need to recuse myself from these 2 fees in particular. So I should remember, but Mr. DiMartini, if you can help me keep my life straight, so I'd appreciate that when it comes to council. Thank you.
Not a problem, Chair Freeman.
Any other questions? Thank you. Now we are on to water and wastewater.
Next slide, please. Oh, okay.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Friedman and Commissioner or Committee Member Harmon. My name is Gabrielle Cook, and I am the Water Resources Financial Officer, and I am here to talk to you about the proposed fee changes in the water and wastewater funds for fiscal year 2023. Dana Hoffenberg will follow my presentation with proposed changes to the capacity charges, which are one-time fees to buy into the city's water and wastewater systems. Okay, and then as was spoken to before, just a quick note that we will be focusing on the proposed fee changes and capacity charge changes today, and then on June 14th, we will have a full discussion on the wastewater rates and the solid waste rates. Next slide, please. Okay, so this gives a general overview for the proposed fee changes for the water and wastewater funds. There are no new proposed fees for fiscal year 23. We do conduct a service cost analysis on fees that are in place. Sorry, I got distracted by the baby. Very cute. So we do conduct a service cost analysis on fees that are in place for 5 or more years. And this allows us to reset the baseline for fees and bring them back in line with the current cost levels. We didn't have any fees that were 5 years or older this year. So what we're doing is we're recommending a 5% increase for the majority of our fees, with the exception of a couple of admin fees. And those are turn-on fees and late fees, and those are going to remain unchanged. The 5% increase is meant to address inflation and cover the cost of services. There are a couple sewer lateral inspection fees that are competitively bid out to a contractor, and we are proposing a 10 to 15% increase to those fees to recover those costs. That concludes my presentation, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you any questions? Thank you for the report.
All right, thank you.
And we're going to continue on with the overview of capacity capacity charges.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee Member Harmon. My name is Dana Hoffenberg. I'm a Water Resources Analyst, and I'm going to be talking to you today about our water and wastewater capacity charges. So these are one-time fees that people pay to buy into the system for the first time, or sometimes existing customers pay them to upgrade their existing services. We don't necessarily rely much on these fees for revenues. They do make up less than 1% of the revenues to the wastewater fund and to the water fund. Again, the purpose of these fees is just to get new customers to pay their proportional share of existing facilities that have been paid by existing customers. So these fees only are comprised only of the capital costs on the water and wastewater funds. So we look at our existing capital assets and we bring those to present value. We divide them by our smallest unit of capacity that someone can buy on the system, and that's how we get our capacity charge. So there's no operations and maintenance component to these fees. They're purely capital. Next slide, please. So looking at the water capacity charges, we are proposing a 7% increase to these charges. Some of the main reasons for that is we are seeing a big uptick in cash-funded capital projects. So after the drought, we did double our water main replacement goals. So we're seeing a lot of new capital values going into the fund, and so that hits the fee and that causes the fee to increase. We're also seeing some debt service payments on some large capital projects, such as the desal plant. So if we fund a project through debt, the unpaid portion of that debt does not hit the fee because hasn't been paid off yet. So the portion of the capital asset that goes into the fee is only the portion that's been paid off. So we are seeing some things like the desal plant is starting to be paid off, so that's starting to hit the fee, which is one of the reasons for the fee increasing. So that's on the water side. Can we get the next slide, please? Looking at the wastewater side, we're seeing a little bit of a different story here. We're going to be proposing a small decrease in the wastewater capacity charges, looking at that for a couple reasons. So we did a capacity charge study 5 years ago. As part of that study, we did a 5-year outlook, and we just escalated the charges 5% each year based on best guess for inflation in the construction sector. For that 5-year period, that 5% actually outstripped actual inflation just a little bit, so that's one of the reasons why we're seeing a slight decrease. Another reason is we are doing quite a bit of capital projects in the wastewater fund, but unlike the water fund, these projects are mostly debt funded. So like I said before, the value of the capital asset isn't going to hit that fee until the capital asset is paid off through debt service payments. So right now, what's happening in the wastewater fund, we just haven't started paying off a lot of that debt yet. Next slide, please. So we are recommending, again, a 5-year adoption schedule. Instead of trying to guess what inflation is going to be doing in this climate, which is a little bit difficult, we are proposing that the charges just increase every year based on actual inflation. And so the index we will be using is the Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index. That's a pretty standard industry index to use for this kind of fee. We did take this to Water Commission on April 21st, and they did vote 4-0 in favor of staff recommendation. And as we discussed before, we will be bringing this to a public hearing on June 14th, along with our utility rates, which we discussed separately. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffenberg. I appreciate the clarification on how debt financing impacts the capital asset value. Learned something new today, so I appreciate that. Any questions?
Thank you.
And next we are on to golf.
Chair Friedman, Committee Member Harmon. My name is Tina Nelson, and I'm the Business Manager for the Parks and Recreation Department, and I will be presenting the Golf Fund proposed fees and service charges. We take several things into consideration when proposing fee increases. We do market research to determine how can we best maximize golf participation while at the same time recovering some cost. Ultimately, we want to keep the sport of golf accessible and affordable to community members of all demographics and ages within our footprint. So we take a close look at who our target market is, what our direct competition is charging, and then determine what the best value is that we can provide for the people that are coming to the municipal golf course in our community. Next slide, please. This year, our fee considerations are to assess $1 to $3 increases in green fees, $1 increase in cart fees, slight increase in the cost of a bucket of golf balls for the driving range, and range value keys. Next slide, please. Some examples of fee changes that we have in front of you today would be a $1 increase in the cost of playing 9 holes. That would take it from $29 to $30 per round, and this would be a weekday resident fee. $3 increases from $42 to $45 per round for a weekday resident for 18 holes of golf. A $1 increase in our junior rate. This would be 7 days a week for ages 17 and under. $1 cart fee, as I mentioned previously, for 7 days a week. We recommend no change for the replay rate and no change for the practice rate, which would remain at $15 per day. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation. I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Nelson. We did hear this the other night, so any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we are on to Waterfront. Mr. Bossy.
Good afternoon, Chair Friedman and Committee Member Harmon. My name is Brian Bossy. I'm the Waterfront Business Manager, here to present to you the proposed waterfront fee adjustments for fiscal year 2023. And if you think you've seen these before, you did last Thursday, so sorry if I'm repeating myself. We have 4 primary fee adjustments that are generating the overwhelming majority, about 97% of the new revenue associated with the fee adjustments. So I'm going to break those down into the 4 proposed adjustments. The first is our slip permit fee. We're proposing a 5% increase. This is on the monthly rate that folks pay to put their boats, essentially a parking spot in the harbor. We estimate that new revenue from that 5% increase would be about $240,000. I separated this out similar to what we did last week due to Mayor Rouse and his need to recuse himself, so I didn't want to flip things around. So that's why you see some of these other fees, which actually fall into different categories, but we are having slight adjustments to all those. For one, the slip permit transfer fee generates about $1.1 million for us per year. Our slip assignment subcommittee Harbor Commission Slip Assignment Subcommittee has been working on this for about 2 years with the public and with slip permittees to bring more parity to the system. So a 20-foot boat doesn't have the same transfer fee as a 100-foot boat. And vice versa. And so we're actually seeing lower rates in the lower, a decrease in that rate for the lower or smaller sized vessels and an increase on the bigger. We estimate that'll be a revenue neutral scenario for us. And then small changes to our visitor late fee, adding a spouse or permit exchange, as well as our monthly slip late fee for our slip permittees. Next slide, please. So what is 5%? 5% of what? Doesn't really mean anything unless you can see it. So, for example, a 25-foot slip on your left, the change per month would be about $12.50. 40-footer would end up costing an additional $22, just shy of $23 per month. And then a 60-footer would be about $40 per month difference. And just to put that in some perspective, kind of brings our 25-footers in line with the average of Ventura marinas. And this is their data from 2021, actually, so I'm sure theirs have gone up as well. For a 40-footer, it brings us up to $511 per month. Keep in mind that Ventura marinas average $657, so another essentially $140 on top of that. And then our 60-footers would come to about $880, and our Ventura marinas average just shy of $1,100 a month. So we're still well below local averages. Next slide, please. So the remainder of the kind of primary 4, we are proposing a cruise ship revenue fee adjustment of $7, going from $7 per passenger to $10 per passenger. That's in line with Monterey, which charges $10, and Avalon still charges $7, but I'm under the understanding that they're going to be bringing theirs up. Those I mentioned those 2 because they're similar to our port, if you will, where people have to be tendered into to port. We are proposing an hourly parking rate change from $2 to $2.50 per hour. That $2.50 would be in line with downtown parkings after that 75-minute free period. We estimate that would bring in almost $525,000 extra dollars in next year. We haven't changed this rate since 2009. Similar to what Ms. Clark presented, I believe in 2009 that minimum wage was $8 at that time, and we're now at 15, as mentioned in the previous presentation. We are also proposing our wharf parking rate move from $2.50 to $3 an hour. We are required to have a higher rate on Stearns Wharf than we are at all of our other parking lots. That's a California Coastal Commission. It's part of the permit when the wharf was rebuilt after one of the fires. So we have a number of other ones as well. Everything from skiff row permits to Marina Gate key fob changes, West Beach outrigger fees, catamaran beach fees, and bike locker fees. The sum total of those is just shy of $29,000. A lot of those fees have not changed since they were started over 30 years ago. So we're trying to kind of bring things back up to speed and get us into modern age. So I believe that's my last slide.
Thank you, Mr.
It is.
Bossi.
So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
Any questions? Like you said, we did hear this Thursday, and I think all the questions were asked then, so no further questions. And now I'll turn it back over to Mr. DiMartini for the update to our budget calendar.
Thank you very much, Chair Freeman, Committee Member Harmon. I'll just do a brief overview of where we've been so far in this budget process and still what's left to be discussed. We started the budget process, gosh, just over a month and a half ago now, almost 2 months ago now, March 10th, right? Yeah, 2 months ago, where we had that large study session with the full City Council. Since then, we had a series of meetings after we kicked off the City Administrator's recommended budget back on April 19th. Then we started our Finance Committee hard work looking at our general fund taxes and other non-departmental revenues. We've now been meeting with Finance Committee twice now on fees. We had general fund fee changes last week. We had enterprise fund fee changes this week. We've also been having our special City Council meetings in regards to the department-specific budget hearings, and we're about halfway through those presentations as well. We're scheduled our next Finance Committee meeting for next Tuesday. At that meeting, we will staff would request to receive the Finance Committee's final recommendations on the City Administrator's recommended budget so that we can bring that to the full City Council for their consideration at the June 8th budget deliberation meeting. And so if there's other particular topics or other questions or comments that the committee would like to have for staff, we can take that from you today, and we can also take that from you at next week's meeting. Over the next couple weeks, we'll still have a number of departments be presenting their department budgets to the full City Council. Those conclude with the Public Works Department on May 25th, and then we will start budget deliberations. The evening meeting on June 8th is where we will list all of the changes that the Council and the Finance Committee have recommended to staff in regards to the budget. You then can vote on each one of those items specifically. On June 14th, you'll have the public hearing in regards to Proposition 218 for the rate changes. And then finally, council adoption is scheduled to occur at the regular City Council meeting on June 21st. So with that, the recommendation for today is just to receive a report from staff in connection with the recommended budget for fiscal year 2023 on proposed changes to the enterprise fund fees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DiMartini. At this point, I will open it up to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? And are there any online? If so, please raise your hand in the app.
Chair Friedman, there are no hands raised online.
I will close public comment, and at this time, it's to us. We don't need to vote, it's just to hear it. So I want to thank all, Mr. DiMartini, and just want to thank all the staff that presented today and your departments for going through all these. I know it's tough, but anytime we're raising fees, but I think each department went through and showed the background and the basis for this, so I appreciate that. And any comments from Councilmember Harmon? And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.